Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Um, I know that this is right around some of y'all's lunch or lunchtime, maybe. I don't know if you've had a long day, but dinner time. And some of you may be putting kiddos down for sleep, or doing whatever you do after a long day of work. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with us. My name is Ophelia, she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Communications at Reconciling Ministries Network. I am so thrilled that you all chose to spend this evening today with Chris Pepple, who is a writer, an activist, a parent, a writing coach, somebody who just gives so much wisdom and life to this movement, especially for folks who are caretakers for younger people. And this is a virtual porch session hosted by the Parents Reconciling Network. If you would like to get more in touch with and learn what Parents Reconciling Network does, feel free to get in touch with Chris. And I see Eric and Roxana are here, Audrey's here, some folks that I maybe miss somebody's name, but some folks who are really great at navigating advocacy and parenthood and faith. So yeah, this is a great a topic that I think is sadly evergreen and that we need constantly. And I hope that it's also a great reminder for us to just dip our toes in and yeah, start in the world of advocacy with where we are today. So without further ado, I would love, Chris, for you to get us kicked off and started.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to see all of you here. And I'm going to talk for just a little bit and I'm going to open it up for a lot of question and answers and hopefully some good conversation. If you think of a question as I'm talking, feel free to go ahead and just put it in chat just so you don't forget. And I will try to go back and make sure I read all the questions in chat on that. But feel free to pop that question in there while you're thinking about it if you want to. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself, besides that wonderful introduction, just so you know a little bit about my family also. And everything that I share in this group, I share with permission of my kids. So I have two young adults. I used to say kids for so long, but now they're 22 and 25. So I'm trying to change and call them my young adults. But I do have a transgender child. And again, I share that with permission. It's very important for me to say that because one of the things that is so important is that we never out somebody else or try to tell somebody else's story while we're doing this. So, and my child does know that when I'm in a safe group, I do share that information. So, I come from, Methodist background all of my life, small town, Mississippi, growing up, then moved to the huge urban area of the Memphis area in Tennessee, and lived in Atlanta for a little while, Nashville for a little while. I am a writer. I write novels, poetry, some devotional books, a little bit of everything. But when I had always kind of been not kind of I had always wholeheartedly believed fully in the rights of LGBTQ plus people. I had when I was at Emory University in seminary, my cousin that I just loved with all my heart died of AIDS, and this was in the early '90s. And if you remember those sad times in the early '90s when we were losing so many young people, and I realized that he had no rights. It was during that time where nobody wanted to do his funeral. Nobody wanted to give him medical care. Nobody wanted to be in the same room with him. Nobody wanted to talk about it. And so it kind of really propelled me into what is it I'm supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? Um, and I struggled a lot because I was not around people who had mentored me at this time to know how to be an advocate, an activist, an ally. And so I was really seeking out people who could mentor me, tell me what do I do? How do I let the world know that I loved him deeply and that he did not deserve the lonely death that he had, where he just felt like he didn't matter to the world. And then we come to these times now, and my son comes out, and we're in a state where it's basically illegal to be my child if he was under 18. So we're transgender youth in my state can't get medical care. They don't have any rights right now. You can't talk about it in school. As a parent, you're terrified. My friends whose children are under 18 are terrified of going to the doctor and a doctor outing them to somebody, what's going to happen. So we live in times like that are still very challenging on knowing what where do we fit in as people who truly see that change needs to be made. So I am a writer, so I'm not trying to, a lot of times I'm going to give some disclaimers very early on here. I'm not trying to force anybody into a role or encourage you to be in a role that you are not yet comfortable or it is not safe for you to be in. So when I talk about the different roles that we can take, we're going to talk about being an activist. We're going to talk about being an advocate and just being an ally, being a parent, and exactly how we can be the best at each one of those. I am not ever all of those at once. So I do a lot of work that a lot of people will say, "Wow, you're really quite the activist." But last year I had 3 deaths in my family. So I went from being I can't say it now, activist, to being more of an advocate. And I will explain the difference and how I saw myself differently in those roles because I just didn't have the energy with 3 deaths in the family. I had to step back for just a little bit. It's not that all of the issues that I speak on are not important anymore, but I didn't have the emotional energy to give that at that time. It didn't lessen my work any. So there's when I speak of these different terms and kind of talk it out about the different roles we can play, I don't see any one is better than the other. I am part of the Mama Bear group, and I also do some volunteer work with Free Mom Hugs. But in kind of our local coordinator for some of the Mama Bears here, there's times where a lot of people say, I don't think I can do that. I'm not ready to do that. I'm scared to say that. I don't want to go talk to my legislator. And that's okay. If that's where you are, we can each though find a way to be a voice for change with where we are in life, what's safe for us to do. Some of us are not in a state that it's always safe. I'm very careful about what groups that I talk about my son in, and I'm very careful to not necessarily give his name in many places because Tennessee is not a safe state for a transgender person. So we each have to decide what is it that we can do. So here's how I start, though, that I want us to think for a minute before I get into the definitions of each one of these. We both have a unique and a common story to share. So our common stories are that we're all born to someone somewhere. We have something that's our favorite thing to eat. We get thirsty. We have emotions. We have a favorite something, a favorite book, a favorite movie. We like some form of entertainment. We all enjoy that, no matter what it is. Where it becomes the unique story is where do we like to travel? What books do we like to read? Do you like sci fi movies, fantasy movies, realistic historical fiction? Some of us are creative. We're poets, playwrights, painters, graphic designers, fashion designers. Others of us work with numbers, accountants,
Sometimes.
statisticians.
Oh,
Some of us have changed careers late in life, and some of us knew since childhood what we wanted to do. So, as we look at our unique and common stories, it's our stories that we're going to use to be both an advocate and an activist, depending on where we are in the moment. So, we know that we're in a world that needs change. We know we have these stories. We see the stories of the people that we love, whether it's somebody in the LGBTQ plus community, somebody that's advocating that Black Lives Matter. We see so many ways that we need to help be a voice for change. Where we often kind of misstep at times, where I misstepped at times, many times, was not understanding which part of my story to tell when and how to use my story in the most powerful way that I can in the situation. And so finally, I just talking to different people through different nonprofit groups, working with people throughout the years. Here's the approach that I have found that helps me the most, and that is asking myself the definition of an activist and an advocate, and then within that, understanding who my audience is. So, to help you understand a little bit about what I'm talking about, let me show you, see if you can recognize some of you probably have similar things to this. I got a mama bear hat. I got pins that I wear everywhere, the LGBTQ rights, RMN pins. I put pins on my shirt. I've got a free mom hug shirt that I toss on sometimes. And when I put all of that on and I am ready to go out the door, to Pride, or if I'm going to a Black Lives Matter march, or if I'm going to a rally for transgender rights at the Capitol, I am an activist in that moment. So you say, so if I am an activist in that moment, what is it that I'm trying to do? Well, both an advocate and an activist are people who want to bring political or social change. When I am an activist, I am, like I said, marching, holding a sign, wearing all of that garb, putting pins all over me. I am loud and proud, as some people will say, or maybe silent, if that's the case. Maybe I'm standing in silence with a group of people because silence is what is most needed. But who is my audience when I'm an activist? This is the key that we have to understand. When I am an activist, the people that hate me the most, now, we all know that there's people who hate what we stand for, so we're just going to use that strong word here. Or the people who disrespect me the most. I am not going to change their minds at all when I'm an activist, ever. In that moment, there's not a single one of those people that are going to do anything but disrespect me more. They're going to look at that Mama Bear's hat, that Reconciling Ministry Network pin, that Free Mom's Hug shirt, and they are just going to be even more enraged. They're going to tell their children, "Get away! Don't talk to this person. Don't stand near this person. That person is." We know what's said to us at Pride sometimes. The person that holds the sign says, exactly where they think we're all going. So why be an activist then if I am not going to change their minds? Because here's who your audience is. And not selfishly, but the very first audience is your own self. When you're an activist, it's often for your own healing or your own growth. You are standing up publicly and saying, I am not going to sit down and shut up. Let me tell you, I am here. I am wearing this Reconciling Ministry Network pin. I am going to wear this Mama Bear hat, and that's it. I'm finding my own strength. So when we're an activist, we are often our first audience for that. We are finding our strength in that moment. But more than just us, the audience for us then also is the people who are living in fear and watching us. There is a group of people that if you look around when you're in Pride, they're on the edges. They're terrified to come out. Somebody has told them they're unworthy. Somebody has told them they can't be loved. Somebody has said to sit down and shut up, to be in your own place. Remember your place. And those are the messages they're hearing. Those are the people that I'm standing up for right then, so they can see, even if they never come over and tell me, I'm telling them that they're worthy of love and respect. I'm telling them that they matter. They're watching to see if we're standing up for their rights or if they have to still live in fear. And so when we're an activist, we are standing up and letting those people see us. They may never acknowledge that they saw us, but they do. They go, okay, there's people in the state that have my back. I'm not there yet of coming out, but they have my back. And when I'm ready, I know some safe people there are some people who think I'm worthy. And then the other people who are our audience when we're an activist are the people who never knew there was another way to think. So there's those people who disrespect us. There's those people who are hating on us when we're an activist. There's the people who are watching because they're terrified of life. They've heard the negative messages and they're seeking safe places to hear the positive messages. But then you have those people that are just kind of in the middle, just there. Like they don't really know what they believe. They don't know either way. Like maybe somebody at their church has said all gay people are unworthy of any type of acceptance. Maybe they've heard it, maybe they don't know. Maybe they're like, I don't know if I even know any transgender people. How do I know if they're good or bad? They're the ones who see us and often say, oh, wait, you look like me and you believe that it's okay to be transgender. Maybe it's a mom who's in our same social class. Maybe it's somebody that's in a nonprofit group that we volunteer with. Maybe it's somebody who plays golf with us or baseball or basketball or goes to the same thing. When they see us in that pride shirt, they're like, huh. And they stop and think for a minute. Wait a minute. I thought we were supposed to hate blank people, whatever you want to put in the blank. I thought we were supposed to hate these people. And they've never stopped and thought about it. So they are our third audience there of people who are watching us and processing, wait a minute, maybe there's two sides to this story. And it's not that they disrespected or hated us before, and it's not that they agreed with us. They just never thought about it before. And so when you're an activist, you're becoming public. So people who have not thought about it before can possibly then hear the other side of the story loudly from those of us standing there. We're not always ready to be an activist. We always don't have the energy. It is very hard work to be an activist. Like I said, when I had three deaths in the family last year, I had to take a break from that. I just couldn't handle the pressure. I wasn't emotionally in a place where I could have somebody threaten to spit on me or something. I just was like, okay, I know somebody else will step up in this role and I will eventually step up. So it's okay if you're not always on the activist side. There's not a ranking of whether it's better to be an activist or an advocate. But here's what I'm going to talk about now, which is something that we often forget. What's the difference between an activist and an advocate? An advocate is still trying to bring social change, social justice, whether it's in a church, a community, your state, the whole nation, whoever you're talking to. But there's a slight difference. We usually have a narrower audience when we're an advocate. We can narrow our audience down, and sometimes that audience is a person who totally disrespects us. I may have to write my legislators in my district. My legislators don't like me. They are on the opposite side of almost everything I believe in. So, how do I be an advocate? How do I engage them in conversation and try to make a difference in a state that is just voting entirely crazy? This is where we have to really go back and think of that instead of our unique story. When I'm an activist, I'm often telling my unique story. I am the mother of a transgender child. Hear me, I love my child. And I'm holding my sign. I love my son. And I've got all my pride shirts on. When I'm an advocate, and some people will disagree with me here. Now, when I go to the Capitol as an activist, I'm all decked out like that. But when I go as an advocate, I look more like what you see me right now. I do have a bracelet that I wear that has good trouble written on it, but you can't read it unless you're really close to me. That's just reminding me to get in good trouble. But I'm seeking that common ground when I'm an advocate. I'm talking to a person who has some type of authority to change the laws. And I'm talking usually to somebody who I know on some level disagrees, disrespects, or sometimes even just out and out hates me. So if I go back to those common stories that we have, that's what moves us from being an activist to an advocate. And we can be both in the same day at times. But when I talk to, I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. when the bills were going on in my state about the healthcare rights for transgender youth, and we're still battling that in my state. I wanted to talk to my representatives and I wanted to send some letters and I wanted to have some real, true conversations. And my first letters that I wrote were like an activist. Let me tell you what, let me tell you. And I stopped and then I put them down and I thought, they're not going to read this. They're going to read the first word and they're going to skim it and go, okay, somebody doesn't want me to vote for this. But how I've started to kind of have conversations, I haven't changed their vote yet, but we're having conversations because what I did was I went to their page and the part that's public, I didn't stalk them in a creepy way, but I went to all their public pages, their public Facebook, their legislative pages, and I looked to see what we have in common. One of mine has a connection with one of I was a writer on staff at a university in Tennessee for a while, and this particular legislator has very strong ties to that same university. So I start my letters with, "Hey, I see that you were at this university. How was your time there? I think I was there about the same time you were. Do you know?" And I list some professors that we probably have know in common. And I talk about how much my kids love living in the same city. And then I move into, hey, let's talk about this transgender thing. Because now they don't see me as somebody totally different, an alien from them. They see me as something that has something in common. You got to remember that what creates the most hate is when somebody convinces us how different we are. When we use that they language, they are like this. They deserve this. They don't deserve this. When all of a sudden it's we, when somebody relates to me for a moment and goes, "Oh, yeah, you're nice. Great. Good to see you. I do remember that. Yeah, you're a nice person. Wait a minute. You have a transgender son." It's harder for them to totally discount me in that conversation and totally put me in a they because they've already established somewhat of a bond. They're always like, "Ah, like me. I can United Methodist all my life," because another one has been a United Methodist all of his life. And so when I write that particular representative, I talk about how great United Methodism is and what I remember growing up and my grandmother's small town church. And look, you came from a small town church just like me. Oh, yeah, by the way, I have a transgender son. Let's talk about those healthcare rights. When they can see me as a person like them, who came from a small rural area, Methodist church, very what I would call a conservative church, if you want to use that language, very traditional church. All of a sudden, I have a tie with that person, and we have a point of conversation. It makes it harder for them to totally disrespect me or hate me as much as they did hate me. They can still disagree with me. It's not like all of a sudden they go, "Oh yeah, sure, of course I'll vote with you." I have not changed their votes yet, but I have changed the conversation. I have gotten to sit at their, you know, sit with some of them and talk about what we have in common and break down some of that. I am not an alien. I am not somebody that just is here to disrupt your entire life. I'm not here to take your rights away from you. I'm here to talk about my son. That changes. That's when we're then the advocate and our audience is limited to that person or that small group of people that we're talking to. That's where we move away from our unique story and we start with our common story. Now, one thing I want to be very clear about before I open it up here, we kind of go into some specifics and things. That doesn't mean I compromise on what I believe. That doesn't mean that I back down on what I believe. I am not going to compromise in any way on transgender healthcare rights. I'm not going to do it. Like, there is no, all right, can we meet in the middle? Can we, sometimes they have rights and sometimes they don't. No, you're going to give them the rights. I'm not going to be quiet until I get it. So starting the conversation differently doesn't mean that I'm seeking a compromise. It doesn't mean that I'm weakening my argument at all. But when I meet with them, I don't let the first impression that they see of me when I meet them as an advocate. I don't wear my pride shirt. I have my pins somewhere near where if you're looking hard, you'll see them. And eventually somebody will see me walking into the Capitol with them. But when I'm not the activist, but the advocate, I find that common ground. So their first impression of me is what we have in common. Hey, I'm respecting your office. I am coming into your space now, and I am going to dress in a way that is respectful for you. That's not compromising what I believe. That's not me fearing their judgment because on some level, I don't care what they think of me. But that is showing them that I'm entering their space in a manner of respect, and I'm going to start on common ground before I delve into okay, here's everything you vote for that I don't like. So think about who your audience is when you're working to make change. Think about the times where you need to be that activist, where you need to stand there loud and proud and let people see you because there's people being hurt and there's people confused and there's people who don't know what to think. And they need us to stand there with those signs and say, this is enough. I'm not backing down. And we need that. I need to stand up sometimes and go, look, Dick, quit pushing me around. I deserve respect, and I'm going to stand here and demand that respect in all of my pride garb and my pride flag in my hand. But there's other times where I'm coming as an advocate, and these deep issues that are coming into our legislatures need us to seek that common ground. They need us to not meet on middle ground in the sense of compromising what we believe, but meet on safe ground for both people so that they understand truly I'm not out to disrespect you. I've heard what you've said about me, but I'm not going to give that back to you in this moment. I'm in your space now, and I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to be respectful on the legislative grounds. When I come into their office, I'm going to be respectful. Their first impression of me is they have no idea how I vote. I don't, until we have a minute or two of conversation, I'm not going to let them put up a judgment. They don't know whether I'm walking in to go, oh, I love you. You're the greatest person ever to be elected in Tennessee. Or if I'm going to come and say, here's my petition. I want you out. I don't let them know that early on because I'm building that common ground. So think about those audiences. Here's one more challenge I want to give you, and I'm going to break it up some conversation. Don't be afraid to write. They really do read what you put out there. The legislators have staff members that read it and summarize it. Many of them read it themselves. It doesn't matter how well of a writer you are. You're like, that's easy. You're a writer. It doesn't matter whether it's perfect or not. It's that you're putting your thoughts down and handing it to them in a way that they can read it and process it without the confrontation. Before I meet with my legislators, I like to have several letters in their hands that are not confrontational letters, that are not activist style letters, but are advocate style letters, where I'm building that common ground and I am building a relationship with that person so that we can meet and have a civil conversation that they see as not me trying to be argumentative, but they then see my point. They hear it. They know it. They may not agree with it. Again, it's not that this works and you just change everybody's mind and all of our laws are changing for the better in Tennessee. I still haven't changed votes. But if we change the conversations, if you start a letter with what you have in common. Dear Representative so and so, I see that you grew up in the same small town that I did. Or I see that you just attended the state fair. Wasn't that fun? I was at the state fair also. I saw on your Facebook page, looks like your family had a great time. You have a brother, I have a brother. Look at all the stuff we have in common. By the way, let's talk about what else I need to talk to you about. So does that make sense where I went with that? All of it is being an ally. An ally can happen in 1,000 different ways. You're an ally if you donate to any group who's doing positive work. If you donate to Reconciling Ministry Network or Mama Bears or Free Mom Hugs or your Affirming Church or Trevor Project, any of these wonderful organizations, you're an ally. You're making a difference. If you write a letter, you're an ally. If you vote for people who will make the world better, you're an ally. So you can be an ally and do 1,000 different things. Just wear your pride shirt. You don't even have to go, put on your reconciling ministry buttons. You don't have to go to a march to just wear them to the grocery store. That's being an ally. And so there's just different ways that you can find ways to touch people's lives. But the biggest thing that I want people to think about is if you can be an advocate in your state, in all of these states where we need our legislators to hear us, that's where you need to define your audience, define your person, get to know them, not in a creepy stalker way, but what they put out publicly. Look and see what they like, find what you have in common with that, and build that relationship. Because when you build that relationship and you teach people how to have that relationship civilly, honestly, openly, without the hate language, we're engaging in what I think is the best way to really change. If that person legislator doesn't change, you might change their staff member's mind who read the letter first. You might change their spouse's opinion, who happened to see the letter or they talked about the letter. You might change the opinion of somebody in that office who had to file the letter and now votes differently because they saw that letter. You're like, you're a nice person. I know you could be nice and support transgender rights. Maybe I need to rethink this. Okay, let's see what's in chat. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah, I'm glad it was helpful because if you don't know your audience, it makes it harder to know what to say. Who wants to share something with me? It can be a personal. Anybody want to tell us how you have best been an advocate or an activist? Who had a hand up?
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yes.
For those of us that live in my state right now doesn't have any agenda at this moment against transgendered persons. So how can we help you in your state, like Tennessee or North Carolina? Is there a way for us to what can we do to help you out? Or is there anything we can do?
That's a really good question because mostly who they're looking to hear for are their voters. They want to know what their voters think. However, whatever parts of your personal story that you're willing to share, you can send it to people who write others and add it to their letters. There are people from around the nation. I'm your constituent, but I'm going to add resources that you have that are national resources. Continue to write even your legislators who agree with you. Have conversations with them. Write your national legislators to let them know that you want to keep this at the top. Even if they vote the same way that you believe, let them know that this is still a huge issue. And they should know that, but just constantly keeping these critical issues above our national legislators also, reminding them of what states. And you can write my national legislator because they vote and it affects everybody. Now, my state representatives in Tennessee don't affect you at all. I mean, no matter what happens in my state, if you don't live here, it doesn't necessarily affect you unless you have a family member. But the vote of my national legislator does affect you because they could swing the vote one way or the other. So write my Tennessee United States representatives and senators and keep telling them, that the nation is watching Tennessee and the nation doesn't approve of what Tennessee looks like right now. Keep putting pressure on them because their vote on the national level does affect all of us. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Who had their hand up a while ago?
That was me, Barbara.
Yes, please do just unmute and ask. It's hard. Y'all are split on 2 pages, so I don't always see the hands. Yes, what was the question?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Did somebody else have a question?
this is Barbara. I have a question or
Yeah.
just a comment, but I don't want to cut someone else off if
No,
someone
you're
else.
fine, Barbara. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I think this is just really helpful and I appreciate it. So I love the nuances between ally and advocate. And I'm a professional communicator and I'm also a mom. And so been really thinking about, I've just learned so much in the 6 years that we've been on our journey as a family. And certainly never wanting to tell my child's story without permission, right? But one of the things that I did that I just wanted to share with people on this Zoom was I live in Virginia, and so I live in Northern Virginia. So everybody for whom I vote at the national level or the state level agrees with me, right? My delegates, my state senator, my representative in Congress, my senators, and so I thought, "Ugh, I really like how can I influence more in Richmond?" And this was really fascinating to me because I met with someone who is an ally, right? But he had, I want to say like he votes the way we vote, right? Or he wants to support the same things. But he had a lot of misconceptions. And we spent 45 minutes talking, and I found myself getting frustrated at a lot of points, even though he gave me 45 minutes of his time. But my point in meeting with him was I know you're on my side. I know you will vote the way I want you to, but help me have more influence in our state. Like, are there people on the other side of the aisle that you know of who would talk with me? Um, I don't have a problem being public, but I have to do that with permission of my child. So I said I wanted to have some private meetings. I just wanted to explain what it was like for us. And, I said, we're in a very supportive public school system where diversity, equity, and inclusion really works. And he said, don't use those words. Don't use those words at all. So I think that's just the other thing that I wanted to add. I don't want to hog too much time, but is the whole knowing your audience and the language that they use, just by something as simple as me saying, oh, my child's been in this safe, supportive school system that's very diverse, equitable, and inclusive. I could turn somebody off just by saying those words. So I thought about your comments of when you're on somebody else's turf. Um, you're not compromising your own beliefs, but you're just trying to get somebody to listen to you because they feel that you're speaking more of their language, so to speak. So I appreciate what you've been sharing so much. And I think my way of doing this is very hyper local, right? I'm a huge advocate in our public school system. And so I've had a teenager who's never been bullied one day in high school for being
Right.
trans and will graduate this year. And that's a privilege. And that's something that other people need to know is it is possible for our kids to feel affirmed by the adults in their lives. So, yeah, I've taken up way too much time, but thank you so much.
Oh, no, excellent comments. I appreciate you, all that you said there. Yes, you're right. If a person, there's some people who hear the word diversity and that's it. They just shut everything else out. They just can't process anything after that word is said. So we do have to, when we're trying to start, when we're being an advocate, we have to watch when we use certain languages that may automatically keep them from hearing us. Now, you also said, and here's a good one. I think political a lot because I'm in Tennessee and politics are just what is the hardest challenge right now. Um, this also is the same thing about a minister. If there's a minister who is not allowing the church to be affirming, uh, this isn't related just to politics. Send them a letter. Here's what my life is like. Here's get to know me. Hey, here's something we have in common. Do you like to go fishing? I like to go fishing. Let's talk over this. Let's find that common ground. Because again, if what they've heard is the horrible lies that are told about transgender people, for example, about, they, are going to harm children and they're just being transgender because it's a fad and all of this. Um, if they find common ground, they may not know. I have found that many people will listen to me because they didn't know anybody who's the parent of a transgender child, and they just heard all the negative, and they didn't. You're like, really? But your kid is pretty cool. And here's another point I'm going to make before I open the next question. I don't always tell people that I'm a parent of a transgender child if it is not safe for my son or it's not a place where he wants me to do that. So, what are our options if I don't think if there's a group that he doesn't want me to out him with, or it feels unsafe to me, even if he's given me permission? You can say somebody I love. That that's it. That could be niece, cousin, because I actually have several LGBTQ plus family members. And so that covers it. You don't have to out your own family member to be an advocate, an ally, or an activist. You can stay safe. We want everybody to stay, like, don't out anybody ever. And you don't have to out anybody. You don't even have to tell your own story if it's not safe at that moment. Just say somebody I love. Somebody I love is gay. Somebody I love is transgender. And if they push me on it and I don't think it's safe, I still don't tell them who. I'm like, it's just none of your business. So put your boundaries, know what your boundaries are before you go into any of this. We have some wonderful, y'all read the comments. If you're not, open your comment box because we have some wonderful people. Tell us about some other organizations that are doing great work here. Got a newsletter there, Talented Youth Community. Yes, somebody I love is transgender. Yes. So, who else? Eric, did I see your hand up a while ago?
Yes, yes. Hey,
Mhm.
this is great. First, Chris, thank you very much for doing this. Um, so it appears to me the proper order, as you're presenting it, of communication would be write first and find a common ground, so forth, which I thought that was excellent. And then uh, if if need be, talking to the person in person. Um, I mean, I always think that's better than over the phone, but over the phone isn't bad. Um, and do you recommend uh, true letters versus emails? Um,
I do, and here's why. Letters are personal. We get excited when we get mail sometimes, and I know politicians get a lot, ministers get a lot, well, stars get a lot. But there's something about a handwritten letter that says, I cared enough to write this out. And the reason I always say, if you can, sometimes you don't get a chance to write somebody. Sometimes it's somebody that you don't know their address, or you just have no way to mail them a letter, or they're just there in front of you and you need to have a conversation. But if you can, the reason I write first is because it's less confrontational. Um, if I want to say something to them that I feel may be argumentative a bit, or need to talk about the way they voted, or something that's going to cause confrontation with them, or just tell them my story. Sometimes I don't even talk about their vote or anything. I just talk about what we have in common and then I tell them my story. Let me tell you about how hard it has been. Let me tell you about the stress it has led to have these laws. And I don't say that you voted for, that you put in. I just say, here's why. I watched my son face so much uh, anxiety and depression by living in a state where my child, who was in band, is on a bowling team, grew up in church. Here's all the great things my kid did, and now my kid had to have all of this problem before. And so when I can put my story down in a way that's not necessarily confrontational, it's in their hands. It gives them a chance to process it without trying to figure out what they have to say to me right then, because it may really make them mad for a minute. If they have been told that everybody that is transgender is absolutely horrible or something, those red flags may come up and they may dig in their heels and ball up their fist. There's somebody in my state trying to do this. Oh, that makes me mad. But then I'm not there in their face, so it gives it a chance to settle back down again. So hopefully the good parts of this that letter will also plant little seeds before then I get there. And I can remind them when I see them in person, hey, remember me? I'm the one who likes to, or I grew up in the same hometown as you. And so I'm reestablishing that common ground first before the conversation. And then we get down to the meat of the conversation. So that's why I like handwritten letters. That's why I encourage people and follow up with the letter. Thank you. Thank you for letting me come into your office today. Because a lot of people truly believe that it's one way or the other. That either they can't understand that I'm not trying to close their church or strip them of their rights or whatever. So if I just keep writing those letters with love and respect, thank you. Wow, it's great to be in your capital city today. Loved seeing your office. That was a great picture of your dog you showed me. I'm respecting them in that moment. Now, that's my advocate. Now, if they keep pushing, there are times they're going to see me out there holding that sign too, saying, stop voting this way. But when I'm being an advocate, they're seeing me on that common ground and they're seeing me as not confrontational. And it's those conversations for the people who disrespect us. It's those conversations that I think is going to take to even begin to bring change. And it's going to be slow. Activist does other things. They're, like I said, we have a different audience. We're encouraging other people to vote if they've never thought about it. They're like, oh, well, if you can vote, I can vote. You look like me, I can vote too. If you believe that. So activism is different from the advocacy, but the advocacy is for the people who strongly disagree with us or borderline disagree with us. They're on the fence a little bit. And I think that's how we make change, is that they stop seeing me as evil. And it makes it hard for them to see me as pure evil if I grew up in their hometown or worked at their same university or liked to fish and because if they can find any common ground, then they can just see me as a person they disagree with and stop seeing me as somebody who is trying to fight them. And it steps out of the fighting arena and brings it back down on that civil level that I think we so desperately need to bring real change. Who else has a question? Steve.
I just want to throw a shout out. I mean, it's real easy to sit here and think, how do I take a first step to get started in something like this? And for me, the thing that really kind of got me going was free mom hugs. I know,
Yes.
free mom hugs me, right? But they do free dad hugs too.
Yes.
But it's a great way to be a part of something that there's more people around you, and they can even be doing the talking initially if you're not comfortable with it. But the stories you'll hear, the people you'll meet, the hugs you'll give and get are just amazing. And to me, they're a great way to kind of give us a little bit of confidence to be able to move forward in something in a way. So I just want to throw a shout out for our group in Oklahoma, Free Mom Hugs, because they're doing a great job. We have a great time at Pride.
And one of the things that you can do when you write them, again, never out anybody, never put anybody's name or anything, but in generalities, you can say, let me tell you about some of the people that I met at Pride who are really struggling with some of the things in our community, and speak in broad generality. So there's no way they can guess who you're talking about, but you can talk about being at Pride, and a lot of people then will be shocked that you're at Pride. Wait a minute, you got a Pride? And it opens doors for conversations. So good for you. Free dad hugs. Dads are just as wonderful as moms. John, I see raised.
Hi, yes. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm John Nagy. I'm transgendered, and I'm here with my wife, Bernadette Hackett. And we belong to the, what jurisdiction? The West Florida, Alabama, Southwest Florida.
Florida.
Thank you. It's a mouthful of the UMC. And I've come out to my minister in the hopes, and he's relatively new in our church. He's been there a couple of years now. And I've come out to him with the specific request that if there's anybody struggling with transgender issues that he comes across in our church, that they should be directed toward me. Okay, I like to do work on the more local level. I came out on national TV probably about 2 decades ago, but since moving south, that was in New York. Since moving south, I've been back in the closet, and it's I could tell you it's a hard place to be because I'm chomping at the bit to move forward and become more of an advocate and activist. And I'm being held back because I'm also a small businessman in my area. And so I've met some wonderful trans people and LGBT people in the area around Panama City and such. But primarily, I'm trying to work more in my local community in Port St. Joe, um, and more on a one-on-one basis. So I wear my progressive pride pin to church, and I'm waiting for people to just come up and say, "Hey, what's that about?" So I can get their ear. I have a couple of buttons. I sing in the choir and I sing in a community choir, and there's probably some people in those organizations that have an idea that I may be trans. Um, and I'm just welcoming the conversation. And like you said, you got to get to know people. I mean, I have many male friends down here, primarily through church and also through my business. And I don't think any of them would look upon me with any so-called feminine qualities. And so they know me as John. They don't know me as my feminine name as Janice. But I'm just eager to just say, hey, listen, we've known each other for 20 years, and I got something important that I'd like to share with you because I feel comfortable with you, and I'm waiting for those opportunities still to appear. But thank you for taking this meeting. It's a good group. I see there's about 26 participants. We're also members of Reconciling Ministries and give them support. And I think my wife needed to say something too.
Okay.
Well, I will say that we are in probably the worst state in the country. Maybe a close second to Texas. I don't know. I think we're vying for who can be the engineer of the crazy train. But I feel very depressed and very like you talk to legislators. I say, why bother? I mean, I just don't see anything happening. And, in 2019, I put a Biden sign down on my front lawn and they threatened my life and they threatened my home that they were going to burn it down. So this is a pretty scary place to live. That's my feeling. And it's just frightening. And I want to flee the state. That's the truth. I just want to go, but we have a business here and, I don't know. I don't feel like you sound positive. I can't feel that way. I just can't.
Thank you so much for sharing both of your stories. And you may not be able to see the wonder that you're doing right now, and it's not showing in Florida and it's not showing in Tennessee, but the small things that you're doing by wearing, and they're not small, I say small, but I don't mean small in a belittling way. The courageous acts that you're doing of wearing a pin and letting another person know they're safe, that is changing somebody's world. Somebody, even if they never tell you, saw that pin and you are changing people one person at the time. That's how we make change. And the only way that I manage to stay somewhat positive, I do have my very frustrated moments and days and lots of tears and lots of watching people that I love struggle with anxiety, with depression, watching elections just go crazy, is to step back and make sure that I'm surrounded a good part of the time by people that are not against me. Whether that's through reconciling groups like this that are bringing hope and cheer and reminding us that we are changing this world slowly, for some states. But if nothing else, we are letting people know that they are loved. And there is nothing more important than we can do by that. All the elections may go against us. Who knows who's going to get elected? I can't control that. But I can control whether somebody knows they're loved or not. So I can tell you, you are loved. And you are creating a safe space for others by putting that pin on and by going to a minister and saying, please let other people know I'm a safe space. That is amazing. That is courageous. And you're letting other people see that courage. And that is what we have to look at to see. We have to stay in touch with all the negative because we don't know what we're fighting against if we don't read the headlines. If we don't say, oh my goodness, more churches are pulling out of our denomination. If we don't say, oh my goodness, look who won this election. We can't stick our heads in the sand and act like everything's great. But we can surround ourselves with free dad hugs and free mom hugs. And you have a Florida chapter there. Find those groups. Go to those public pages. Even the private groups have public pages. So you can find the public pages of Reconciling Ministry Network, Mama Bears, Trevor Project. Y'all put all these names in here that I can't think of. Y'all make a list over here in chat for anybody who needs an affirming group. There's a lot of really affirming groups. Connect yourself with those people. Human Rights Campaign. Connect yourself, even if it's only online. If you don't have a totally affirming church, you can still go to your church, but also find another one to watch every once in a while that is affirming. Find one that has online services, or find a nonprofit group if you're not religious, and plug in to those huggers and get help.
We do have those groups and we do go to them, but I can tell you, I was a psychotherapist, and one of the things I did in the 1990s was I ran groups for drug and alcohol abused people who tried to kill themselves because they were gay and lesbian, okay? So that is where I got my heart for this particular group. And I can tell you that I learned more in that group than they ever learned from me. But as I did that, now what's happening in Florida is they're making it so impossible for children to come out and get the help they need. And they're doing so much damage to families and children. And it's breaking my heart because I know what happens. They go to drugs and alcohol to self-medicate their feelings and their shame, and then they try to commit suicide. And what is that? Why do they do this to these kind of people? I don't understand it. It's horrible to me. I volunteer at a food pantry through our church, okay? And we have some transgender gay people coming to the food pantry. They're in my little town. We only have 10,000 people in the whole county, but we have those people in this county. And these people are being harmed every day, by our church, by a Methodist church, by the state. And it's just horrifying to me. And it's just breaking my heart. That's all.
Yeah, I think we have to, your points are right on, spot on, valid. You are 100% right that there's still a lot of pain. And we're not going to be the ones who totally erase that pain for the whole world. I can't take on the whole world. I can't change the whole world, but I can love, and I can accept that we have to weep over this pain in the world. So I do let people know that I weep. There are times where people see me shed tears with someone whose child is struggling with anxiety, depression, whatever. And that's part of being an activist and an advocate and an ally, is admitting that I cry over it sometimes. But it's like any point in history where there has been extreme terror. It's, if we lose hope, then hope is gone. If we put out our lights, the light is dimmed. And so I am not the light of the world, but I hold my light, and I joined all of your lights, and together we are the bigger light. My light is little, if I If I overinflate myself, then my ego gets too big and I'm not helpful. And if I underestimate myself, I am not helpful. I am a small light, but when I join all of you, and when I put on a pin or say a prayer or I go to a nonprofit group, whatever your thing is, you are being the light. And so the hope is that we are the hope carriers and we are the lights. And all together, we're just not going to let them post out. All throughout history, there have been people trying to extinguish lights for whatever reason. You know, you look back and how horrible it was during the 40s, 50s, 60s, 30s, 20s, times of slavery, times when women were abused for no reason. Children had labor laws and children were in factories. I mean, you can go back and look at all the dark parts in history. And eventually the light wins slowly. So don't let your lights go out. All of you, put your thoughts down on paper. Send me questions. Y'all can look me up and find me, connect with each other. And thank y'all for coming. Thank you so much for processing this and being part of the light and the hope and the change. And if Ophelia's here, do you want to end us with anything?
I mean, you said the perfect words to send us out, Chris. So I don't know what else there's to say except thank you so, so much. I have always been inspired by and blessed by your like immensely joyful spirit. And to get to see like, you know, that joy is on purpose and it's built and you've had to work at it. Just I admire you all the more for it. Thank you so much for the ways in which you infuse our lives with so much wisdom and hope. And thanks for sharing your gifts with us. Thank you to all of you who have joined us for this event too.
Well, good night, and I hope to see all of you again soon.
Yep. Be well, everyone.
Bye.